It's strange, the way a life unravels, not in a sudden tearing, but in the soft wear of repetition. Not in arguments or slammed doors, but in quiet forgettings. Our home is quiet in the mornings. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that hums with things unspoken. James sips his coffee by the window, glancing at his phone, always reading something. News, markets, football scores. I sit across from him, stirring cream into my mug, watching the swirl disappear like a thought I never voiced. He still wakes before me. Still warms the kettle. Still sets out my favorite mug, lavender, chipped on the rim. He is kind. Steady. Predictable. I once found that calming. Now, some mornings, I wonder when comfort turned into stillness. 12 years. The number settles in my chest like dust. I can trace our life together through calendars and receipts, anniversaries and dinner reservations. The years are full. Full of effort, of days built side by side. Full of shared burdens and blessings, of taxes, and birthdays, and flu seasons. But lately, I feel like I am watching our life through a window. Like I am outside the scene, not living it, just repeating it. James hasn't changed. If anything, he's become more himself over the years. More focused. More structured. He finds joy in order. His socks folded just so. His tea steeped exactly 3 minutes, the garden pruned to the inch. I used to find it charming. I used to tease him for his precision. Now I wonder if I've become part of his routine. Another thing arranged neatly in his day. We haven't fought. There's been no betrayal. No sharp edges. Just an ever-widening space where the closeness used to be. Sometimes, I test the boundaries of that space. I'll wear my hair differently. Buy a new perfume. Say something bold. But the reaction is always the same. Kind, nodding, a distracted smile. As if he's listening to me the way one listens to elevator music. He loves me, I know that. But sometimes love becomes a habit. The truth is, I've been lonely in a house filled with someone who knows everything about me. And maybe that's the worst kind of loneliness. The one that's polite. The one that doesn't shout. I signed up for the photography class on a Tuesday evening in April. James had mentioned, absent-mindedly, that the community center was offering spring workshops. Pottery, yoga, creative writing. He said it while scrolling through his tablet, not looking up, as I folded laundry on the sofa. You should do one, he said. Might be fun. I nodded. He didn't ask which I'd choose. He never did. That's not his fault. We've just stopped asking each other things we think we already know. I chose photography. Not because I'd always dreamed of it, but because something in me needed to look at the world differently. The class met every Saturday morning in a dusty room that smelled of printer ink and floor wax. Fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. We were a mix of strangers, retirees, students, one man who carried a camera like it was a weapon, another who barely spoke at all. And then there was Daniel. He arrived late the first day, wearing a corduroy jacket and a grin that didn't apologize for anything. His camera was old, film, not digital, and he spoke like someone who had lived 2 or 3 lives already. He called light a language, said shadows were whispers. At first, I rolled my eyes. But he made people laugh. He made them lean in. I sat near the back, unsure of how much I wanted to participate. But Daniel noticed me. Not in a forward, flirtatious way. Just attentively. The way someone notices silence and is curious about it. You shoot? He asked me during our first break. Not really, I said. Trying to learn. Good, he said. Beginners take the most honest photos. They're still listening. It was such a simple thing. But the way he said it made me feel like I had something worth hearing. Each week, we wandered out into the neighborhood, cameras in hand, looking for stories in alleyways, peeling walls, crooked windows. I found myself watching people more closely. The elderly man sweeping his porch. A child dragging a kite across the sidewalk. A woman pressing a letter into a blue mailbox. And sometimes, I caught Daniel watching me. Not inappropriately. Not long. Just long enough. I told James about the class, of course. Showed him a few prints I'd developed. He smiled. Said they were nice. He didn't ask who took the one of me in the mirror, the one where my eyes looked unfamiliar, like they belonged to someone else. At night, I'd lie in bed beside James, listening to the hum of the heater. He'd reach for me, lightly, out of habit. I'd turn toward him, let him hold me. But my mind would be elsewhere, on the feel of a camera strap against my neck, the way the morning light touched brick buildings, and the sound of someone saying my name like it meant something again. Nothing had happened. Not yet. But something had opened. A door I hadn't known was ajar. And I was standing on its threshold, wondering if I had the courage, or the cruelty, to step through. It's frightening how easily a life can divide itself, how days can continue in neat, predictable patterns while something entirely different stirs beneath them. Saturday mornings with Daniel became my secret season. I told myself it was harmless, a class, a hobby, a new way to see the world. But in truth, I was seeing myself for the first time in years, and I didn't recognize the woman looking back. She was lighter somehow, quicker to smile. She laughed without watching the room to see who noticed. One afternoon, after class, a few of us lingered by the canal. The others eventually wandered off, one by one, until it was just Daniel and me, standing near a rusted railing, talking about light and weather and what makes a photograph feel like a memory. I think we miss most of our lives, he said. We're too busy walking through them. I didn't answer right away. The wind caught my scarf and pulled it gently sideways. I watched it flutter and felt strangely exposed. You ever feel like you've been asleep for years? I finally asked. He looked at me then, and not with amusement or sympathy, just with a kind of soft understanding that made my breath hitch. Yes, he said. There was a silence that settled between us, a silence full of things neither of us said. And in that silence, something shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. After that, I stopped bringing my photos home. James didn't notice. He was busier at work, often distracted, though never unkind. He still poured me tea on weeknights, still asked about my day. But there was a distance in his voice, like someone reading from a script they've grown tired of. I can't say I blamed him. I spoke in half-truths. I left out details. Sometimes I'd catch myself studying him as he spoke. His jaw, his hands, the slight crease between his brows when he read. I tried to remember the first time I noticed that crease, when it still felt new and endearing. Now, it just reminded me how long we'd been living alongside each other instead of with each other. One night, while James slept beside me, I sat on the floor of our closet, the door cracked open just enough to let in a sliver of hallway light. I held a stack of old photos, honeymoon pictures, grainy and sun-washed. We were so young, eyes squinting into some shared future. And I wept, not from guilt exactly, or even regret, but from the ache of something precious having faded without either of us noticing. Daniel wasn't the cause. He was the mirror. And I had been avoiding my own reflection for years. Still, I saw him again. And again. We never planned it. The meetings came as easily as breath, as inevitable as gravity. A shared walk after class. A coffee that turned into two. A glance that lasted too long. And then, eventually, something unspoken passed between us and was understood. Not acted on, not named, but present, like heat just beneath the skin. A moment not crossed, but leaned toward. And I allowed it. Not out of impulse, but out of something slower. A hunger to be seen, not as a wife or a fixture in someone's routine, but as a woman. A whole woman. Still vibrant, still unfinished. Still capable of being wanted. It didn't happen all at once. It unfolded like twilight, gradual, unnoticed, until I was standing somewhere I hadn't meant to go, under a sky I didn't recognize. There was no declaration. No thunderclap of decision. Only a soft and terrible yielding. It was raining that day. The streets were empty, glazed in silver. Daniel and I had taken shelter in the back room of the community center, the lights flickering overhead, our conversations slow and unhurried. The kind of talk that leaves space for silence, that trusts it. And then, the moment arrived. I saw it in his eyes before I felt it in mine. I can't tell you exactly what we did, or how it started. I only know that something between us crossed the edge of suggestion and became real. And though I've combed my memory, trying to find the instant where I might have turned back, I can't. Not because I was swept away, but because I let it happen. I opened a door and walked through it quietly, willingly. It wasn't about love. I don't think it ever was. It was about being seen. It was about returning to a part of myself I hadn't touched in years. A woman who could still feel desire, still be chosen. Not out of habit or loyalty, but out of want. That evening at home, I stood at the kitchen sink while James worked at the dining table, his glasses slipping slightly down his nose. I studied him, his worn cardigan, the way his fingers tapped the keys, the tiny furrow in his brow that I had once kissed absent-mindedly in bed. He looked up and smiled, distracted but sincere. "Dinner soon?" he asked. I nodded. I thought I would feel guilt. Crushing. Immediate. Instead, I felt a strange kind of quiet. Not peace, not relief. Something heavier. Like the weight of a bell just before it rings. In the days that followed, I moved through our home like a shadow of myself. I answered when spoken to. I smiled when required. I folded laundry, refilled the bird feeder, arranged groceries on their shelves. From the outside, I did everything right. I was still a wife. Still here. But inside something had come undone. Not in anger. Not in drama. Just in stillness. James didn't notice. Or maybe he did and didn't know how to name it. Maybe he saw the shape of something missing, but hoped it was only temporary. I tried to stay. I tried to reattach myself to this life. I watched him closely, looking for a thread I could still hold on to. But every gesture felt rehearsed now. Every ritual, tea, bedtime, the weekend errands, felt like echoes of a version of us I couldn't return to. And yet, I couldn't leave. I wasn't brave enough. Or cruel enough. I don't love Daniel. I don't want his life. He was never the future. But now I no longer know how to remain in my present. Each morning, I wake and ask myself the same question. Can I stay? And each night, I fall asleep without an answer.